On this day in history, 2005, the Oscar Award-winning film Brokeback Mountain made its grand premiere. Adapted from a short story published in 1997, this movie certainly dug into some deep emotions while venturing into what some felt was taboo. After seeing the movie, I walked away with an invaluable pearl of wisdom. Don't hide your feelings. Hide the evidence. Live from Wattpad Nation, it's the Corner Booth, your weekly broadcast where we talk about all things centered around that big orange W. And tonight I'm very excited to present four amazing poets that are a part of Wattpad. And they are Thomas Bonneck, Glenn Hockney, Christine Bodice, and Aime Diaz. So I really hope that you're strapped in for this. We have a pretty creative high five this week, I would say. I I asked these amazing poets to do something absolutely crazy and insane, which was take a two-syllable word that I select and transform it into a beautiful sinryu, which is kind of like a haiku. It uses the 5-7-5 syllable pattern, and it's derivative from Japanese poetry. So if these panelists would first say the word that I gave them, and then please share with us your sinryu. I'm going to start with Miss Aime.
Sure. The word you gave me was Pringles.
As in the delicious potato chip that everybody uses to make a duck face at some point in their life.
And I love it. Okay. So it goes like this. Cheese dip and Pringles, popcorn soda, beers and rum, party mix kisses.
I like it. It's very nice. Very nice. Were you kind of in a party mindset during this?
Pardon me?
Were you in a party mindset? It sounded like a grocery list that you would write for like a nice party.
I don't know. I was eating Pringles. When
okay. You were getting in the zone. You were getting in the zone. That's great. Brand new panelist, Christine Bodice is with us. Christine, will you tell us not only the sinryu, but your Wattpad moniker?
Yes, it's Nichterides, and it means bats in Greek.
Can you say that one more time? Because I was not going to even try to pronounce it.
Please say it.
All right, Nichterides.
Nichterides.
I'm just going to call you Christine.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Would you please share with us your sinryu?
Yes. Well, you gave me flubber. And when I saw it, I nearly fell off my seat. I'm like, what is it? I write Gothic poetry. What am I going to write about flubber? But I came up with something because I love a challenge. Okay. Greenish slime rubber. I have missed my wedding twice for green slime flubber.
I have not. Wow. Okay. So you took flubber into a dark corner. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It is a very deep pleasure of mine to introduce the Wattpad or the Corner Booth community to someone who goes by @OwenGlenn.
Yeah.
And honestly, okay. So hang on. Why isn't this working anymore? Hang on. Give me 1 second. I'm showing a mute on Glenn. All right. Glenn, how are you this evening, now that I can hear you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Would you please share with us your sinryu and the word that I gave you?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not able to do that. A, because I didn't pick the word up, but there's something far more important. If you were to look at my work, you would see that I have a medical allergy to Japanese poetry. This has come from many years of never ever writing a haiku or a sinryu. So unfortunately, A, I didn't pick the word up, and B, if I did, I am allergic to it.
Fair enough. No arguments here. It's perfectly fine. We're very glad to have you, Glenn. We're trying our best to work with some of Glenn's sound. So if he repeats something, it's just because we really want you as an audience to hear it. But we're going to work as best as we can with it, and we're glad to have you here, Glenn. Thomas, what do you got for us?
Oh man, I can only hide so long here now.
I know.
My word is Spice Girl. Okay, so here's mine. Hectic drive, Spice Girl rapping, for some no lights, no Christmas shopping.
Awesome.
I like it. A little snappity snap on my end. Absolutely. Thank you, Thomas. And now we are going over to my favorite part of the broadcast. It's called Cream or Sugar. And why is it my favorite part? I'm going to tell you why. It's because it gives us a chance to put you, Wattpad Nation, in the spotlight. Whether you're a cream, a relatively unknown Wattpadder who has risen to the surface, or at least this panel's library, or an established Wattpadder, they just want to show some love or give them some sugar, this is the place for you. And I'm going to start in the same order. Who do you want to give a shout out today?
Okay, for cream, I have Anne Elizabeth Carson and her Laundry Lines, a memoir and stories and poems. Laundry Lines, a memoir and stories and poems, considers the hidden world of women and how they communicate in a rich subterranean world of emotion and knowledge to one another, weaving often unexpressed inner lives into the fabric of their public roles. I love this set of poems because she relates so many anecdotes on her life and put them into verses and stanzas, and it's delicious to read, for real.
That's great. Thank you. What else do you got?
Okay, and for my sugar, I have the Christmas_story holiday poetry contest, which is a contest hosted by the ambassador, and from which Glenn is one of the judges, and maybe he will later can talk something more about this. And you have to write a poem based on the Christmas theme and create a new book and just submit it. So it's open for everyone.
That's great. Absolutely. And it's super important to, get those kind of contests out, especially for people who've never taken a stab at poetry and, try to do something cool. Miss Christine, who do you got?
Well, for cream, I've got Ragged Clown, The Wine Harvest. Yep, that's it. Ragged Clown was one of the first people I followed when I joined Wattpad, and The Wine Harvest was one of the first poems I read. It's really, really down to earth, and it feels like you're reading Steinbeck in a way, because it's very real and raw, and I really enjoy this. Sugar, I've got Shannon Kelly, Where I Have Been Wandering, collected poetry. And if you like dreamy, fairy style poetry, but with a hint of darkness in it, you are absolutely going to love Shannon Kelly's work. Both poets are highly recommended.
Excellent, excellent. I love it. Thank you, Christine. Glenn, who do you have for us?
Right, well, I've actually not just got cream and sugar. I've got cream, sugar, and cognac. That's because I didn't do the haiku, okay?
Okay.
And for the cream, that's This Is Me, with a collection called Zebras. Now, this particular lady has a large collection of poetry on Wattpad, and is one of the most unique writers I've had the pleasure to come across. In this particular collection, she writes on a very personal, very earthy basis, but she does something that lots and lots of poets don't do. At the end of each of her pieces within this collection, she refers back to the title of Zebras. And a zebra being probably one of the most iconic animals, she relates in each piece a particular trait of this iconic animal. And it actually brings the poetry out to the most unique way that I've seen in a very long time. It is absolutely well worth a read, without a doubt.
That's great. Thank you. Who else do you have?
Of the sugar, I have selected somebody, a young lady called Red Hair, and again, that's her. Salt and Alabaster is a collection that you will, if you read it, you'll never forget it. She takes abstract events in life and she brings them out on paper in a way that I've not seen for a long time. One of the things that she does is she makes poetry not only easy to read, but pleasurable to read. You don't have to have a degree in medieval English to understand what Red Hair is saying. When you get to the end of each piece, you know, A, you have read something where the word choice, the meter, is balanced, but it's understandable. It is something you can take away without having to wonder what the poet actually meant. Again, absolutely well worth the read.
That's wonderful.
The Cognac is something completely different. And it's a young lady called Sloane Ranger, and she has written 4 books of these limericks, and they are incredibly popular. Now, I don't think people actually understand how difficult writing a limerick is. It isn't just a case of picking some words where the end of them rhyme. You've actually got to make the piece of work make sense. They are humorous, they can be sexy, and they can. She actually writes some of them as almost tributes to literary figures, people on Wattpad. And the other thing she does with them is she includes her audience. So when they read and comment, I've seen her go back time and time again and actually make small changes to her work to encompass what her readership wants. And it is absolutely, for me, one of the things that every Wattpad contributor needs to understand. Understand what your audience wants. Write your highbrow stuff, do what you want with it. But if you're going to keep readership, you need to produce things that people want to read. And if you look at the number of reads and votes and comments that this writer has got on these 4-part collections, you will see that she produces what her readers want to see. It's light, it's frothy, but it's enjoyable.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Glenn. I think what you were saying about producing something that others want to read, unbelievably challenging.
Absolutely.
And to do it with grace and be able to exhibit talent definitely goes to show this person is someone who has staying power.
Oh, yes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Glenn. Thomas, who do we got?
Oh, gee, I totally agree with Glenn there. You know what's also very, very difficult, Matt, to go after Glenn. That is very, very difficult.
Hey, you wanted to go last. I'm just saying. Like, this was your call.
Okay, my shout out is going to be for James, Standing Bear, and Sab, SABIHA_X. Standing Bear is very, very talented. He's supportive. He writes with no boundaries. I like the fact that he writes freely. He can just take anything and make it into a poem, and I really, really appreciate his pieces for that. If you go to his site, his profile, you'll see that he has tons of work to choose from. And I think one of the reasons you can find so many pieces is because he feels so free to write. He writes with such great ease, and I think you should swing by his profile and check it out. Sab is also pretty much the same. She's very, very supportive. She writes very, very well. I find her to be a great member of the Wattpad community, and she has a wide range of work also. One of her pieces is Scrabbled Reflections, and also a collection of broken poems. You should just swing by and check out those pieces. Those are my 2 sugar and creams.
Thank you so much, Thomas. That's great. All right, we're going over to the portion of the broadcast, which is the meat of the discussion. We call it the entree, and of course, it's going to revolve around poetry, just like the episode suggests. So we're really going to dig into this, but first of all, I think everybody is going to have a different take on this. Question number one: what separates poetry and prose, and why are both important to literature? I may. First up to bat.
Okay, there are several differences, although in the end, literature and poetry and prose, they have so many aspects to share. But, well, mostly everyday writing is prose. In the other side, we have poetry, which is written and typically reserved for expressing or sharing something very special in an artistic way, very pertaining to poets. The language of prose is typically straightforward, without much decoration or ornamentation. In the other side, a poem is conceived to be more expressive or embellished with direct or indirect comparisons, rhyme, images, and rhythm that contributes to give a different sound, feel, or emotion.
You're not a teacher at all. That didn't sound like an educated answer. I don't know. Thank you so much. Christine, do you have anything to add?
Well, I would say that poetry is more expressive, in my opinion. There's more of a rhythm to poetry than to prose. More beautiful, more imaginative. You can decorate it more, of course, which I absolutely love. Prose is more of a short story. I don't think it has the decoration, let's say, that poetry does, though both of them are absolutely wonderful. You know, a lot of people consider poetry to be a little bit more flowery than prose because of the rhyming, because of the way it's written and expressed, but they're both vital to literature. I mean, you can't have, I think, one without the other. I think they're both things that we absolutely need to have, read, take part in if we can. Yeah, that's my 25 cents there.
Well, absolutely. You can't have just one flavor of ice cream. You gotta,
Exactly.
Make a sundae. Come on, just seriously. Glenn, what can you add?
Well, I mean, firstly, they have some strong similarities. For example, they both use language. Prose tells stories. Poetry can tell stories. Homer's Odyssey is a story. Dante's The Divine Comedy is a story of types. But where they differ intrinsically is that with prose, be it a short story, be it a lengthy novel, be it a trilogy, there is a plan. And the language used does two things. It describes, it tells a story. With poetry, language is much, much, much more fluid. You can use the language that you have in poetry, not just to tell a story, but to create an image. And not only to create an image, but to create almost a tune. If you use the words properly, if you choose them carefully, you can actually make a rhythm out of the poetry. And it doesn't necessarily take rhyme, but the way you use the words, the way you balance them, the way you put them together, can actually make a song out of language.
That was a very poetic answer, Glenn.
It was.
I'm just like, wow. I'm gonna just step aside and let him talk for the rest of the broadcast. That's amazing. Thomas, try to top that, sir. I'm just kidding.
I'll answer mine this way. See, as a creative person, outside what I do here in Wattpad, I like what poetry does for me. You know, the way I'm able to express myself, the freedom it gives me. You know. The way I'm able to be as elaborate as I want to be, as discreet as I want. I can leave something up for your own interpretation. With a story, I can't do that. So I really do a lot. And plus, it takes less time, right? It takes a special skill. I mean, they both serve different purposes, I would say. But for poetry, I like the freedom it gives me to be discreet if I want to be, right? And just to leave my work up to your interpretation. I really like that I can get that through my poetry. Sometimes you want to be able to do that. You want to be able to say something, but not say it as clear as you would want me to say it. But it's out there. I was able to get it out of me, and now it's sitting out there, and it's up to you to understand what I was trying to say. I like the fact that I can do that in my poetry. So that, for me, that's the big difference, right? One, you can leave it an open-ended, and then the other, you probably can't as much.
I think a big win, whether you're writing prose or poetry, is when you actually connect. You can feel it. Well, and with Wattpad, I mean, you immediately get some sort of feedback with comments, with votes, and things like that, and it will land the notion of whether or not you connected with your audience. And it's gotta, feel like the best pat on the back when somebody's just, you might have written something completely abstract, but the fact that they can connect with it, that makes it really, really interesting. Kind of like Rorschach testing with the ink blots. And when you see something that somebody else sees too, and yeah, that's pretty amazing, absolutely. I'm trying to keep up with the live chat. It's just kind of scrolling back up through it. Oh, hello, everybody. If I didn't type your name in, I know I said hi to Lucy and Angela. I see Carl's here now. Layla, hi, Layla. Rachel is here too. Hello, Lynn. Thank you so much for tuning in live. We're very excited to be back. If you do have any questions during the broadcast, please do not hesitate to ask. While I'm kind of searching through this, I can see one right here. Rachel Mole, she asked, I've always wanted to give writing prose a shot. Not done it before. Any tips? Christine, can you give her any tips on prose if you've ever tried it or taken a stab at it?
Yeah, well, for me, I think the best thing that you need to do when you're writing prose or poetry is to just feel what you're writing. Don't plan anything. Just hang on to a feeling or a thought and just let it snowball from there. It may not work for everybody, but that's just my opinion. And just try, and of course, in whatever you do when you're writing, you don't give up. If you don't like something, you just try again. You do something different.
I think it's a testament to experimentation. You're going to have trial, you're going to have error, some things are going to land, some things aren't. But that's kind of the beauty of it, right? I mean, in all actuality. I do want to take a minute to tell everybody, if you haven't noticed, the last few episodes we haven't given away anything. After some miscommunication on my end, I had found out that if anybody who has been told they're getting a Wattpad mug, you are getting a mug. It's not going to be the same one. Those are completely out. So what I'm going to do after the holiday season is make mugs through a custom mug site, and it will not only have the orange mug, but it will have a Corner Booth stamp on it. So hopefully that's a good consolation. Anybody that has won one or has participated in contests, so on and so forth, we are definitely trying to get those to you. It's just going to be on our dime versus Wattpad's, and I'm perfectly okay with that, but I do want to let you know that you have not been forgotten. Let's see, what else do we got here? Oh, we're going to scroll down. Oh, Christine, I kind of am cornering you right here. I'm very sorry. But there are numerous subgenres in poetry. However, there are three which can pretty much blanket the rest. Free verse, narrative, and lyrical. Can you tell us what these are and how they work?
Well, I'll try my best.
That's all we asked for. That's all we asked for.
Okay, let's start with free verse. Free verse is an open form of poetry. It tends to follow the natural rhythm of speech. And sometimes free verse can be written as very beautiful prose. Now, for a narrative, form of poetry that tells a story, there's actually a fabulous example for narrative if you want to take a look. It's called The Highwayman by Alfred Noyes. And if you haven't read that poem, you should. And if you don't want to read it, then there was actually a part on Anne of Green Gables, if you guys have seen Anne of Green Gables, where she recites the Highwayman. It's absolutely brilliant. So you can take a look there. And for lyrical poetry expresses personal emotion and is typically spoken in the first person. Now, in ancient Greece, lyrical poetry was verse that was accompanied by a lyra or a lyre, and these words were typically sung. Nowadays, we don't really sing our lyrical poetry. I guess we can if we want to, but yeah. And that's pretty much it.
Oh, that's great. A really, really great expansion on that. You mentioned the Highwayman, and, well, when I hear that, my mind drifts to this movie. It's an older movie. It's called The Good Son. It was with Macaulay Culkin and Elijah Wood. And Macaulay Culkin's just completely insane in this movie. But they actually throw off at one point a stuffed man over the side of a highway, and it's like a really terrible prank. And so, I don't know why, I was just scarred by that. I don't know, I just can't do it. I can't.
I don't think there's no connection between those two.
No. That was just where my brain went.
Alright.
Wired a little differently, I apologize. Which brings us to question number 2. What inspires your poetry, panelists, and what hinders it? I'm going to start with Miss Aimee.
Okay. For me, everything can inspire me. We can write something about...
That wasn't a vague answer at all. What inspires your poetry? Everything!
But that's true. Everything can inspire poetry. Well, in my case, I can compare... Well, not compare because that would be not fair at all. But in my case, I can compare my inspiration to the book of Emily Dickinson's poetry. And what inspires me is love, life, nature, and death, like the book of poetry that she wrote and was published after she died. But mostly in my case, right, and mostly beautiful landscapes from my island and the culture in my island. And if you have read some of my poetry, you will see that I write mostly about that. And love. I love to write erotica and a love poetry. And there's a quote that says in Latin, "Facit indignatio versum." That means that sadness or indignation creates poetry. And I think that most of the time when a poet writes, he writes from the soul, from the very deep core and heart. And if something strikes the poet, the poem comes resonant and powerful, like a powerful hurricane, and it resonates as cannons and fires. And that's the way sadness or indignation or something that moves us can create a poem.
I think it's great that you're highlighting the extremes, because that's so important. I think that what drives a lot of writers in general. You could be somebody who writes a narrative novel or somebody who writes poetry, and I mean, in all honesty, you're either at a really high or a really low when you first start out. So I mean, it totally makes sense. It really does. Owen, I'm gonna, or Mr. Glenn, I'm gonna skip over to you, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about your inspirations.
Okay. I would slightly change the word and move from inspiration to responsibility. And if you go back to ancient times, and minstrels strode the country telling stories, not just of battles, but of politics and of humour. Where I live in Cornwall, they were actually called drummers, and they got paid in food for the stories they told. And I think the responsibility of a modern poet is to examine all areas of life, not restrict themselves. Poetry is social comment. You can take politics and you can make poetry from it. You can take death, as Amy says, and make poetry from it. You can take love, humor, everything that you see when you leave your house every day, kids going to school, policemen walking down the street, Politicians lying their teeth off day after day after day, bankers stealing the fortunes of the poor. Those are the responsibilities and should be the inspirations of poets.
Wow, yeah, I'm just that's incredible. Like, I mean, there's nothing left to the imagination on that one. You just kind of really hit the nail on the head. That's fantastic. I love the fact that you're, re-angling that into something that I think everybody can level with, whether you write poetry or not. And I think a lot of people, of course, are going to know the story of Scheherazade. And it's just kind of one of those classic tales of a princess who is facing the death sentence, and the way that she survives night after night is by telling the king a story. And she always leaves him with a cliffhanger, and she does it, with just like these panelists are saying, evoking a lot of emotion, making sure that it's connecting with the person that's listening, which is, the ruler, and she survives night after night because she tells an amazing story. And I think it kind of is a really good summation about what these panelists are talking about. A lot of poets, they're writing to survive, and it is a way to just use the 26 letters and create some emotion and use it as a really, really good outlet. So I'm really glad that you said that, Glenn, because it's just provoking all sorts of thoughts in my head. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Thomas!
You're correct there, because I think most poets, I can guess, didn't start off being poets. I think sometimes it's that place you've been, it's that place you are, it's that place you want to get away from. You decided to grab that piece of paper and start digging yourself out. When I started writing poetry, I'm a designer actually, right? I'm not a poet actually. And when I decided to start, well, in fact, I don't even know if I decided to start writing poetry. I started writing a journal, and that journal turned into a book of poetry, and that book of poetry appeared on Wattpad, and I started liking it, and I started writing more. I tend to write about what affects us as humans. I see that more clearly than other things around me. I can write poetry, and I do write poetry about everything, Rose to die of hit by a bus, right? But it's sometimes what you want to write about, and that's just poetry. You can be inspired by everything, and the reason is always different. Poetry can take you anywhere.
It's interesting that you say, wanting to write the poetry, and I totally agree with that. But is there a point in time where you can say it wasn't a choice that you made, it kind of chose you? There's something that was just such a big concept that was just screaming at you, write about me.
Yes, in fact, because poetry is a song, right, without music. I was listening to a guy on the radio just recently. He had a business, he lost the business, lost his wife, he ended up on the street. He was on the radio for whatever reason, he was telling his story. And his story was that he went to see someone to kind of help him get out of his troubles. And they said, you know what, you should just make notes of what you're going through. And he was on the radio reading poetry. That's what he wrote. That's what he was going through. Turning into poetry.
That's incredible. I love that. I love that a lot. Oh, Miss Christine.
Well, inspiration can be found anywhere. I know I'm being very, very vague.
Yeah. There's nothing vague about this question. Sorry.
Sometimes it just finds you. That's kind of how I started writing poetry. One of my friends was writing. I think this was in grade 9. She was writing poetry, and I was watching her, and I read her poems. And she goes, "Well, why don't you try it?" And it just happened, You can be inspired by a memory, something you saw that second, something you heard, a story that's playing in your mind, and it's just transforming into something very different. Poetry, for me, and inspiration in general for me, is a road that you take, and you're not really sure where it's going to lead you, but it leads you to this beautiful, strange, interesting place. And I'm very, very happy that I continued writing poetry. because I actually published a book in May as well.
That's amazing.
And yeah, it was something that I never thought would happen. And it just happened because I guess I let it happen. And that's inspiration just kind of taking me by the hand and saying, you know, just do it.
You know, there was a pretty decent poet named Robert Frost. He talked all about the road not taken and everything.
Exactly.
It's a good encompassment of what
like
you got through. You know, that's amazing. So great. All right, I'm gonna tag in Miss I May. Out of the many tools available to poets, most first reach for metaphors and similes. What are these, and how do you write them effectively?
Okay, first of all, I want to say that both metaphors and similes work both for prose or poetry in either ways. But most likely, you see them in poetry because a poem, I don't know, for me, it begins with an image.
Mm-hmm.
And that's maybe one of the differences between prose and poetry themselves, that a poem begins with an image, and you then go down and describe that image to in different ways. And a metaphor is an implied comparison, and it compares two things that are not related at all, but have some similarities and maybe in their characteristics. And the metaphor highlights those characteristics, such as, for example, if we have a person with black hair, we can say Arabian hair, or a person with blue eyes, we can say sapphire eyes, or maybe I am wearing.
Ooh, we lost your audio. Can't hear you. Can anybody else hear I May? Try unplugging your headphones and plugging it back in.
Okay, I will. You hear me?
Mm-mm.
Oh my God.
Hang on, let's see. Sorry, everybody. Technical difficulties. It happens.
Yeah. Okay, let me see what I can do. Tell me what I can do.
There it is. I think we got you. Should I say something?
You got me? Yeah.
Whoa.
Okay, let me do it again. No? You hear me?
No, can't hear you. Oh no. Can you try rejoining the Hangout? Maybe it's an app issue.
Okay.
Just try that, and we'll try to make it happen.
Okay.
Okay, so we're just going to scoot on over to Thomas. Alliteration and assonance. These are also poetic tools. If you can explain what these are and how do you use them?
Well, I think that has to do with the rhythm and the flow of your poem. And I think I tend to use them a lot more because I like when my poems flow, pretty much more like song. So that would be my quick and easy explanation. I think, to be honest with you, Amy would be able to give you a much more in-depth explanation. Yes.
But you use them both, yes?
But yes, as I explained, that's how I use them.
Great. Thank you, Thomas. And if you are still wondering, like, what exactly those are, alliteration, that first letter, you just keep using it, word after word after word. Assonance, it leans on the vowel sounds. So that's, when you're echoing vowel sounds throughout your poetry, that's assonance. I May, can you say something?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. Awesome. If you can finish your thought on metaphors and similes.
Okay, so basically that is what a metaphor is. It's an implied comparison without using the words like, similar to, like, or as in the way we use with similes. Similes is a direct or comparison. And when I don't know if you heard the examples that I said, like a woman with black hair, you can say it's a raven hair. A woman with blue eyes, you can say sapphire eyes, just to say a random example. Or if I am wearing a red lipstick, you can say rosebuds lips. So in a simile, we use the words like, similar to, as, for example, black hair like raven feathers, or blue eyes like sapphire. So that's the difference between a metaphor and a simile. Uh, in a metaphor, we use an implied comparison, comparing two not related things in a very direct way. And simile, we use the words like, similar to, or as.
Do you ever find a circumstance where you're writing these things and you think, wow, I'm overusing this specific tool?
Well, I try not to use similes because they are very, when we write, they look mostly all the same, and we overuse the same words. I try more to use metaphors instead.
Easier, yeah, absolutely. You don't want things to become stale by any means. That is, yeah, absolutely. We're gonna move on to question number 3. How do you channel emotion into words, and why is imagery so important in making this happen? Christine, I'm gonna start with you.
Well, I get an image in my head from something I've seen or heard, and when I begin to write a poem, it just kind of snowballs into something else without, like I said before, I never plan a poem, it just kind of happens. And I've always had a huge imagination as a kid. It was just running all over the place, running wild. And I loved that. I loved creating stories and scenarios in my head. So imagery was always a part of me and very, very important, because with my poems, I'm painting a picture I see with words I know. So I'm creating something. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it isn't good, but that's how it is.
Do you okay, when you are faced with the fact that, or at least the personal opinion, that it isn't good, how do you go back and try to, I don't know, hack it out? It seems like when you write something in a poem that you kind of want to lean into saying it only one way and one way only. I don't know, maybe it's different.
Well, I try to be realistic with my work. I mean, you can't be perfect all the time. Nobody's perfect. You know, you're gonna do 50% of the stuff is gonna be great, 50% of the stuff you're gonna hate. But I like leaving those poems as well, and then I'll go back and I'll read them and I'll say, okay, you know, I didn't like this because of this, or I should have done this. But I'll try not to change them too much. They'll just go into my, you know, these aren't very good pile.
And then go back to them later. That would be a really, really cool experiment, to write a line of poetry for one poem once a year and just see what happens after a decade. Like, that would be really kind of cool.
I tried that once for a year.
Oh, yeah? Like every day?
4 lines. No, it was every month. 4 lines per month.
So you would write kind of a stanza each month? Oh, yeah, I can imagine. Because you would start thinking about things like, what am I going to do with this next month? Or try to write yourself into a corner in November or something.
I would write it, but I would leave it. I would ignore it until I took that piece of paper again and then continued writing. But it was really cool reading it after a year and just to see what I came up with.
Right. Sounds amazing to me. It sounds like a really, really great project. Glenn, what do you got to add?
Well, I think there are some interesting issues there. First of all, this idea of people writing a poem in 20 minutes and posting it 20 minutes later if Wattpad is working, I can't do that. I have to write by hand, and then I put it in a drawer somewhere, and I leave it there for 4 or 5 days. And this can be happening with 5 or 6 pieces. I'll then take it out of the drawer and look at it and say, it's got some merit, or it's rubbish, and I'll put it in the bin. And if I think it's got some merit, it will go back in the drawer. It's almost like making bread. You leave the dough to rise. And if you can read it 4 weeks after you've written it, and it still makes sense, then it's worth developing and posting. In terms of emotion, that actually builds within that process. Because if you're using language to express emotion, it has to do that. It actually has to jump off the page and hit you. And it's no good saying, my love is like a fire, because if I say lots of love, it's not like a fire at all. It's cool, it's calm, it's loving, it's sensible. So there are many different ways of actually doing this. But the first person you've got to convince when you're writing emotion is yourself. Because if you can't convince yourself, it isn't going to convince anybody else. And it's like most other things, it is best left and looked at later.
If you don't like the bread, then nobody else is going to like the bread. That makes sense. Absolutely.
You're absolutely right. By the way, I can't cook either.
I think that's great. The fact that you put something into a drawer and kind of let it ferment, I guess. Let it kind of blossom into what it is. And I mean, how long, any given piece of work, how long is the cycle?
It can take, it depends on its merit. I write not, I write humor. And I can write humor within a week. If I'm writing politics or if I'm writing dark poetry, it can take sometimes months. I've written a children's series, which is so far only halfway through, and it's taken me 2 years. I've written a series on slavery, which began very quickly, but the pain of actually writing it means that it has now taken an extremely long time. Romantic poetry is slightly easier because that is coming from the inside and you can get that down a lot quicker. But it really does depend. But what I can't do, and I don't speak for others, is I can't write today and post tomorrow.
And I don't think that's necessarily a flaw. I mean, you kind of say it like it's a I don't know, a bad thing. I think that's a great thing that you're so invested into what you're putting on Wattpad.
Yeah.
I think that, and it was an interesting thing that you said about love is easy to write. And you also said it always varies depending on who you are. These kind of generalized statements. If you're in love, I think it's easier to write love. If you haven't, if you're kind of bitter or kind of turning cynical slowly but surely, it's easier to write heartbreak. So I think that, you know, depending on where you are in life or something like that, I'm not using the right words or anything to explain this, but the fact that, you know, wherever you are as far as your season of life goes, you're going to be able to write that much more effectively than, I don't know, putting yourself into somebody else's shoes and then trying to connect with somebody that way. I don't know. For me, I think this kind of goes with what everybody's been saying on the panel. If you write something that's soulful from your personal experience, then it's going to connect a lot easier with your audience. So, and I think the four of you do that rather well, or you wouldn't be here with people watching and also people on Wattpad that definitely follow each of your work. So that's wonderful. Thomas, what do you got to add?
Imagery. I find that when you're on scene, when you're on that site where your poetry is going to take place, you're going to launch from, I find that you'll have thousands of imagery. And for me, I have to pick the most telling ones. I want to write my poetry. I want to create my scenes in as few words as possible. So for me, I have to take the most telling pieces from around my scene and place them. And that's basically what I do. Because like I said, you will be seeing thousands of things around you. Whatever you're writing about, either maybe or side of an accident or whatever. Right? So for me, it's picking those very important pieces, those words, that's going to place you right there. And for me, I don't want to say it in many words. So that's basically what I do. I just really stand there, search for those words that can take you there. That's how I create.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Christine, do you have anything to add?
Where would we be without imagery?
Super important to this genre, definitely. Do you think there's something that you do specifically with imagery that is, I don't know, either something that you've had to craft, I guess? I know that a lot of things, just with any sort of writing style, there are people that are naturally talented, of course, but you've got to be able to hone those primary fundamental skills. Was there something that you worked on as far as imagery goes? Because I know that spans. Imagery is a huge component. So practice makes perfect. I guess that's kind of the cliche way to say it.
Well, something that I think has helped me quite a bit is just listening to feedback. You see something from a different point of view because as a writer, you only see it one way. You get this writer's blindness, and it's good when you can see it from a different point of view, and that helps a lot. I know that doesn't have anything to do with the imagery. It's just something that is just vital for you to grow as a writer in general. And then I guess your imagery just comes along with it, yeah.
Have you gotten some advice from somebody on Wattpad that you would just classify as invaluable?
A lot of advice, a lot of great comments, great feedback. If it wasn't for Wattpad, I wouldn't have gone to publish my book. I wouldn't. I met so many great people. They said good things. They helped me out. They were truthful about certain things, and I really like that. And it's just really helpful. Like I'm really, really grateful for everybody and everything that they've said. Yeah.
Everybody needs a cheering section. It's super important.
Definitely.
You gotta have it. You gotta have it. Absolutely. We're gonna round this out with something that I'd like to ask Glenn. Can you tell us how poets publish, and then give us a little glimpse into the process?
Well, that's an interesting one. I remember some time ago attending a business course. I don't know how many of you guys have heard of Alan Sugar?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's quite a famous businessman in the UK. And he attended a class I went to, and somebody said to him, "How on earth did you make all your money?" And he told this very quick story which said, "I bought 5 umbrellas. I took them down the marketplace and I sold them for 20% more than I bought them. Then I went and bought another 5 and did the same. And then my uncle died and left me £1 million." Now, it is fairly simple. If you are working and producing stuff that people want to read, that does not mean that you are going to interest a publisher in that work, particularly in the genre of poetry. The average poetry publication sells no more than 1,000 copies. And these days, trying to find a publisher who is prepared to invest his time and money to turn over maybe 1,000 books, maybe 1,500, is extraordinarily difficult. And
unless your name rhymes with Shel Silverstein, right?
Sorry?
It seems like Shel Silverstein, everybody knows that poet. But yeah, no. There's always exceptions to the rule, but I get you. Keep going. Yeah, that's great.
But in my particular case, and this is where Wattpad played a part, my Sweat collection had attracted 2.5 million reads. Somebody on Wattpad, another prolific writer, gave my work to her publisher. She was already published. She said to him, "You need to talk to this guy." She then put him in touch with me, and we chatted. But he made it very, very clear to me that if there had not been that substance on Wattpad of 2.5 million reads, the chances of him actually publishing that particular collection was pretty remote. So what you simply have to do is to write the stuff that people actually want to read. You've got to constantly go out into the marketplace. I would look for an agent for poetry. They're few and far between, like entities. What I would be doing is constantly, and was doing, is trawling the internet, looking for publishers that specifically publish poetry. Go to magazines, small magazines. Every time you can tell a publisher I've been published before, your chances of being published are greater. You are not going to start with HarperCollins. You're going to start with a smaller house, and you're going to work your way up. And it takes huge determination. But if you believe in yourself, and you can actually get people to read your work, then you can achieve it. And my goal in life, I will be honest, is to try and take poetry from the niche market that it currently is and make it accessible for everybody to enjoy. So we don't write poetry that it takes a genius to understand. We don't want to leave our readers thinking that they're intellectually inept by admitting they can't understand the bloody word of what we've written. What we want them to do is to enjoy what we put on the page. And if we can do that, and Wattpad is doing it, we can take poetry from the niche market it is and make it far more accessible.
That's great. I love that. I mean, it had so many great points, and it strengthened numbers. The fact that, you know, a niche audience, that's huge. And finding, you know, a way to kind of pay your dues. Poets are artists, and artists always have to pay their dues. There's something that it's kind of a congruent story to what you were saying, but I want to say maybe 5-6 years ago, nobody really cared about this genre called a cappella. It was kind of a tired genre of music. And then there was this group called Pentatonics, and I mean, they won a reality show, so that helps a little bit. But the fact that they brought and resuscitated, you know, that specific genre, they found their niche audience, and they found a way to make a connection. Which, I mean, it's great what you're saying, Glenn, and I think that a lot of people, they're just going to realize slowly but surely, wow, like everything else, if I want to succeed with this, it's going to be really, really hard. Yes. So I'm glad that you didn't sugarcoat it.
Good.
That's great. That's great. And now we are going over to this last part of the broadcast, which we call Pass the Salt. It's just a way to add a little bit of flavor to these broadcasts. Every panelist has 140 characters to do whatever they want with, whether it's a quote, factoid, just general observation. We got about 2 minutes left in this broadcast panel, but I'm going to start with you. What do you got for Pass the Salt?
Okay. Poetry is to paint with words the secrets of the heart.
I like that a lot. Thank you. Christine!
Well, this is one of my favorite quotes, so I'm going to share it with you all. I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free. And that's how I feel about poetry. Blank piece of paper with something just waiting to happen.
Yeah, oh, that's great. I love it. Glenn!
Mine will be fairly simple, I guess. Poetry is not life. It is far more important than life.
I'm just going to kind of let that sit, let everybody marinate in that. That's pretty awesome. Thomas!
Okay, this one is by the late Maya Angelou. Says that there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside.
Could you say that one more time?
It's by Maya Angelou, and it's there's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside.
I love it. That's great. Fantastic. All right, panel, we are done with this episode. If you would please say good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
We will catch you next week. Same time, same great channel. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.